The Calder Sector Defense Academy was supposed to be a fresh start for Lena Voss. At 22, she was one of the first wave of human recruits under the new Galactic Integration Accord. The gleaming spires and antiseptic corridors hummed with 100 different species, all studying the same manuals, all learning the same universal doctrines of warfare. Lena's instructor was a Cathene named Scritch. His carapace was a mosaic of old plasma scars, and his voice sounded like stones grinding together. He did not hate humans, Lena thought. That would require an emotional investment he didn't possess. He viewed them as a statistical anomaly, a primitive, recently uplifted species that needed to be fitted uncomfortably into a galactic mold. The first red flags were subtle. During initial physical assessments, the medtechs, a pair of slender Rexians, shook their heads at her suboptimal bone density and inefficient bipedal stance. Her assigned pulse rifle felt wrong in her hands. The grip was designed for a 3-fingered hand with a dorsal thumb. When she asked about adjustments, Scritch had simply said, "Adapt. The galaxy is not built for your comfort." The Academy's 3 firing ranges were a microcosm of this philosophy. Range 1 was for basics. Range 2 accommodated physiological differences. Range 3 was where legends were made or broken. Standing in her ill-fitting uniform on the polished deck outside Range 3, Lena felt the weight of silent scrutiny. 52 other recruits, representing a dozen species, watched the lone human. She overheard a hissed comment from a Vrexian cadet named Shresh. "Look at its posture. No ancestral memory of predation. It's like watching a herbivore try to roar." Lena didn't react. She just ran her thumb along the familiar, wrong-feeling ridge of her rifle stock and thought of her grandfather's backyard range, the smell of old gunpowder and cut grass. She had a feeling that here, in this sterile place built on alien logic, those Saturday afternoons were about to become a profound liability or a weapon. The qualification test was simple. 15 static targets, 60 seconds. Accuracy was everything. Lena watched the others first. Shresh and his Vrexian partner moved with synchronized, elegant precision. Each shot was a deliberate event, a perfect application of theory. The targeting screens lit up with near-perfect scores. A ripple of approving clicks and hums moved through the observing recruits. When Lena stepped to lane 18, the casual indifference in her walk made Scritch's mandibles twitch. She checked her weapon with a familiarity that seemed instinctual, then settled into a stance that violated 7 different Academy principles. Her grip was all wrong, her lean too aggressive. "Begin," the automated system announced. What followed wasn't marksmanship as the galaxy understood it. It was percussion. Pop, 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 pop. Pause. Pop, 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 pop. She didn't aim so much as point, her body flowing through the space. She fired twice at every target, her transitions a blur. The sharp, rhythmic cracks were utterly alien compared to the measured pulses of energy weapons. Silence fell as her score flashed. 15 targets. 32 hits, 89% accuracy. Shresh was the first to speak. His voice loud in the quiet. "Impossible." She wasted half her ammunition on neutralized targets. "This is not Doctrine." A chorus of agreement rose. A Hellcat recruit sneered. "Earthborn. They still use chemical propellants on their homeworld." She probably learned from primitive historical simulations. Instructor Scritch said nothing. He simply watched Lena, his predator's gaze fixed on her as she cleared her weapon with that same, seemingly careless efficiency. When she approached him for dismissal, he didn't comment on her score. Instead, he asked a question that made every nearby recruit freeze. "Recruit Voss, where did you learn to shoot?" Lena met his stony eyes. "My grandfather had a range, instructor, weekends, for fun." The word fun seemed to curdle in the recycled air. Scritch's mandibles clicked once, a sound of deep suspicion. "Return to formation." As she walked away, she heard Shresh mutter to his partner, "Did he just flag her file? For what? Success." But Lena felt a cold trickle of understanding. She hadn't just broken a score record. She had broken a paradigm. And in a system built on control, being an anomaly was dangerous. The debriefing hall was thick with ozone and hostility. Lena sat apart, feeling the weight of 52 pairs of unblinking eyes. The other recruits dissected her performance not as a success, but as a cultural failing. It was statistically inefficient, a Catholic cadet stated, his feathers ruffled. Doctrine exists for a reason. Her form was atrocious, a trash with 6 eyes added. No discipline. It's a wonder she didn't injure herself. Shresh, though quieter, was clearly the ringleader of the disapproval. He argued not with anger, but with the cold certainty of someone whose entire worldview had been challenged. The parameters reward accuracy, not chaos. If we reward this, we undermine everything this academy stands for. Lena kept her mouth shut. Arguing would only fuel their derision. She saw Scritch at the front, conversing in low tones with a Cathene aide. The aide nodded and hurried out, pressure built in subtle ways. Her training schedule was abruptly changed, adding extra fundamental mechanics sessions. Her equipment requests for a modified grip were denied without comment. During squad drills, she was consistently placed in the most disadvantageous positions. As if testing her ability to fail correctly, the only one who didn't openly scorn her was a quiet Jorvian engineering cadet named Alara. One evening in the mess hall, as Lena poked at a nutrient gel, Alara slid onto the bench opposite her. Her voice was a soft hum. "I accessed the raw telemetry from your chute." Lena looked up, wary. "Your time to first shot was 0.3 seconds, Alara murmured. "The academy average is 1.8. Your recoil control was 97% efficient, even with that. Grip." She leaned forward. "They're not angry you did well, Lena. They're terrified because you did it wrong and it still worked." It was the first hint of solidarity, a lifeline in the rising tide of institutional pressure. But as Alara slipped away, Lena saw Instructor Scritch watching them from across the hall. His expression was unreadable, but his attention was a promise. The conflict was just beginning. The advanced assessment was a trap disguised as an opportunity. Scritch announced it before the entire class. "Recruit Voss has demonstrated anomalous performance. She will undergo a practical evaluation, a direct comparison." He turned his gaze to Shresh. "You requested fairness. You and your partner will compete against her. Teams against solo." A wave of murmurs swept the hall. Solo? It was a clear setup for humiliation. Range 3 had been transformed into a nightmare course. Moving targets, strobe lighting, obstacles. Shresh and his partner moved through it like a single organism, precise and beautiful. Their score was exemplary: 18 targets, 95% accuracy. A textbook victory. Lena walked to the start line alone. The observation deck was packed. Wagers had been placed. Odds were 3-1 against the human. Begin. What happened next wasn't a demonstration of academy doctrine. It was a revelation of something else entirely. Lena didn't clear sectors. She flowed through them. She fired while moving, pivoted into shots, reloaded without looking. She engaged targets before they fully materialized. Her shots are relentless. Rhythmic pop, pop, pop that echoed like a heartbeat in the dark. When the lights cut out completely, she fired twice by muzzle flash alone. The final scoreboard glowed. 26 targets, 53 hits. 91% accuracy. She had neutralized more threats, faster, than the perfect team. The silence was absolute, broken only by the hum of the projectors powering down. Shresh stood frozen, his confidence shattered. He hadn't just been beaten. He'd been shown a language of violence he didn't speak, Scritch strode to the center of the range. He didn't look at the scores. He looked at the stunned faces in the observation deck. "Our planet doesn't have training ranges," he said, his grinding voice quiet. "They have shooting ranges. You know the difference?" No one answered. "One produces marksmen," Scritch said. "The other produces this." He gestured at Lena, who was calmly clearing her weapon. "She is an average human. Our world has 400 million citizens who do this for fun." Lena felt the breaking point shift, not for her, but for them. The galaxy's condescension cracked. They saw her now not as a primitive, but as a predator from a world they had profoundly misunderstood. And in their eyes, for the first time, she saw fear. The fallout was immediate and cold. Lena was summoned to the office of Commander Thelvis, a Jorvian officer whose demeanor was carved from ice. "Your performance forces a doctrinal reconsideration," he said, steepling his fingers. "Your techniques are unpredictable. They violate interoperability standards. We must determine if your species requires segregated training." Lena felt a cold anger settle in her gut. They weren't trying to understand. They were looking for a reason to quarantine human capability. "Permission to speak freely, Commander?" "Granted." "You're asking the wrong question," she said, her voice steady. "You're asking how to make us fit your manual. You should be asking what your manual is missing." Thelvis's expression darkened. "Explain." "We didn't learn this in a military," Lena said. "We learned it in our backyards. We turned weaponry into a sport, then a science, then a culture. While you were perfecting the rifle for war, we were perfecting the shooter for a weekend trophy. You standardized the tool. We evolved the user." After the meeting, Lena found Alara in the engineering bay. "I need data," Lena said quietly. "Everything you can find on human participation in galactic conflicts. Mercenary reports, border skirmish, after-action reviews. Not the official summaries. The raw sensor logs." Ilara's large eyes widened. "That's restricted. Why?" "Because I think we've been fighting for you longer than you've known," Lena said. "And I need to prove it." Meanwhile, Scritch was doing his own investigation. In the archives, he pulled grainy footage from the Bellis 4 conflict. There, among the chaos, were human contractors. He froze the frame. The stance, the grip, the aggressive movement, it was identical to Recruit Vos's terrible, awful, extraordinarily effective technique. A technique born not from war, but from 1,000 Saturday afternoons. The discovery was a key turning a lock. The humans weren't just recruits. They were carriers of a viral, unregulated combat evolution. And the Academy, built on control, had no idea how to contain it. Lena and Alara worked through the night. The data was damning. In every minor conflict where humans had been present, even as non-combatants, the metrics showed the same anomalies: faster engagement times, higher hit rates under stress. Adaptive techniques that broke all established models. "They've buried this," Alara whispered, her fingers flying over the console. "They recategorized human effectiveness as anomalous environmental factors, or enemy incompetence. They didn't want to rewrite the book." Lena knew what she had to do. During a mandatory assembly for all cadets and staff, when Commander Thelvis was giving a lecture on the unity of galactic tactics, she stood up. "Commander." "A question." The hall went still. Scritch, standing at the rear, went rigid. "Proceed." "Recruit Vos," Thelvis said, impatient. "If a doctrine fails to account for a measurable, repeatable, and superior combat effectiveness, is the doctrine flawed? Or is the data being ignored?" A wave of startled murmurs rolled through the crowd. Thelvis's face tightened. "This is not the forum for theoretical debate, Recruit." "It's not theoretical." Lena's voice carried, clear and firm. She held up a data chip Alara had prepared. I have compiled performance records from 7 documented actions where humans were present. The metrics consistently show that human-derived engagement protocols, which this academy dismisses as sloppy or wasteful, result in a 40% higher threat neutralization rate in the first 60 seconds of contact. The galaxy's doctrine isn't wrong. It's just incomplete. And by refusing to see that, you're preparing every soldier here for a war that hasn't existed for centuries. Shresh stood up, his crest flaring not in anger, but in dawning realization. She is right. The words seemed torn from him. We competed. I saw it. It was not inefficiency. It was a different calculus. One where survival is not a test, but a game played for keeps. Panic flashed in Thelvis's eyes. The orderly narrative was crumbling. Security, detain recruit Voss for disseminating unauthorized. Belay that. Instructor Scritch's voice cut like a blade. He walked to the front, his scarred carapace making him look like an ancient monument of war. He took the data chip from Lena. The recruit's data is accurate. I have verified it. The problem is not her performance. It is our pride. He looked at the stunned assembly. We uplifted a species we considered primitive, without asking what they had perfected in their primitiveness. They didn't need to weaponize their leisure. They never stopped being weaponized. They just built a civilization around it. The downfall was not of humanity, but of galactic certainty. The momentum had turned. A formal tribunal was convened in the Academy's central amphitheater. The entire senior staff and representatives from multiple member species were present. Commander Thelvis stood as the prosecutor, laying out the case for controlled integration and doctrinal compliance. Lena stood alone at the center. This was no longer about a qualification score. It was about the future of humanity's place in a galactic military. The human methodology is chaotic, Thelvis argued. It encouraged individualism over unit cohesion. It is born from a culture of recreational violence. We cannot allow such an ethos to infect the disciplined structures of our combined forces. When it was Lena's turn to speak, the room felt vast and cold. She took a steadying breath, thinking of her grandfather's hands, calloused and sure, guiding hers on a steel barrel under a summer sun. You keep calling it recreation, she began, her voice soft but carrying to every corner. But what is recreation, if not the relentless, voluntary pursuit of mastery? For centuries, on 1,000 ranges back on Earth, humans have put themselves under the timer, under the stress, under the eyes of their peers, and asked one question: can I be better? Faster? More accurate? We turned the act of violence into a discipline of continuous improvement long before we ever aimed at another living soul. She activated a hologram, showing side-by-side footage, an Academy-perfect Rexian cadet on Range 3, and grainy video of a young woman at a bustling Earth competition, moving, shooting, reloading with breathtaking speed. You see undisciplined chaos. I see generations of problem-solving. You see a wasted round. I see insurance against a threat that might still be moving. You see a flawed grip. I see the evolution of control for rapid transitions. You didn't find us in a war, Commander. You found us at play, and you assumed that made us weaker. She turned to face the Council directly. You fear what you don't understand. But the galaxy is not a safe place. It needs more than soldiers who can follow a manual. It needs problem solvers. It needs beings who, when the lights go out and the manual is wrong, can still fight with the instincts honed over a lifetime of trying to beat their own best score. She finished, the silence overwhelming. Then, Instructor Scritch stepped forward. He didn't address the Council. He looked at Lena, and in a voice every microphone picked up, he whispered the words that would echo through the Academy forever. Only Earthborn can shoot like that. because only Earthborn were foolish enough and brilliant enough to turn survival into a sport and mastery into a pastime. The truth was revealed. It wasn't an indictment of humanity. It was a revelation. The climactic victory wasn't won with a rifle, but with a truth that shattered galactic prejudice. Reforms began within the week. The Voss protocols were drafted, not to restrict human techniques, but to integrate them. Cross-training seminars were established, with human recruits like Lena assisting as junior instructors. The Academy's firing ranges saw new additions: timers, moving tracks, stress simulators that echoed the games of Earth. Shresh sought Lena out one evening on the observation deck overlooking Range 3, where new recruits now struggled with unfamiliar drills. "I owe you an apology," he said, his pride replaced with earnest respect. "I mocked what I did not comprehend." "No apology needed," Lena replied. "You fought for what you believed was right." "So did I. What is your grandfather's name?" Shresh asked. "Henry," Lena said, a smile touching her lips. "He'd have gotten a kick out of all this. He taught you well. Not just how to shoot, but why it mattered. Humanity did not conquer the Academy with brute force. They changed it with a simple, undeniable truth. There is a profound power in a skill practiced not out of duty, but for the sheer, stubborn love of getting better." The Galactic Accord's diplomatic decision to uplift humanity was now seen in a new light, not as charity to a primitive race, but as an unconscious recruitment of the galaxy's most relentless innovators of personal combat. Lena stood her watch, looking at the stars. They weren't intimidating anymore. They were just farther targets in a bigger range. Somewhere down there on a blue-green world, millions of people were spending their weekend doing what she did for fun. They were the unseen foundation of a new kind of strength. The galaxy had tried to teach humanity its ways. Now it was learning from them. Not because humans were super beings, but because they were survivors who looked at a tool of war and saw a challenge, a puzzle, a way to spend an afternoon. And in that uniquely human spirit, part perseverance, part play, part stubborn defiance, lay an unbreakable will. Humans endure. Humans adapt, and sometimes humans play for keeps.